It was a historic weekend here in the LCK. Damwon Gaming did not do this. It was Dplus KIA getting it done. Their first ever organizational reverse sweep, and the first time that T1 has been reverse swept since 2016 against KT Rolster. That's where we start this week's Let's Cover Korea. Digon here alongside Wolf. And Wolf, you were on the call. As much as there were other playoff matches, this is the big story. It's T1 out of LCK Cup finals, out of first stand running, and will not be going to Brazil. And it was in a reverse sweep fashion where I think it's easy to look at it from the T1 perspective, but I want to be able to celebrate the Dplus KIA perspective of how much they suffered across all the different games, from Career having a crying breakdown in cvMax, which looked like the reason for the breakdown at the moment. And then we got other camera angles and some context there of him consoling Career and an understanding of the level of pressure and that he was under. It was a packed day of League of Legends on Sunday.
Yeah, it was. I predicted 3-0, right? We talked about this a little bit last week. I expected that T1 was just gonna roll D plus. They're just so much better than them in terms of like map movement, team fighting, etc. Like I thought there was a real world where some lanes could go awry for T1, but that it wouldn't ultimately matter. I thought like maybe Showmaker gaps Faker in one of the games, and then it doesn't matter because Faker just outplays him around the map, and it doesn't end up being an issue at all. And so I kind of thought the day was going to be a quick one. And we walked into the game one draft with the Zarayumi, Atlas and I, and we were just kind of like, I don't know about that. That seems weird, right? Like that doesn't seem very safe. That doesn't seem like it's what I would do if I wanted to make sure I'm going to Hong Kong today, especially because this is kind of a unique answer to the Ash Seraphine that we hadn't seen yet, and it was a answer that you might have wanted to keep hidden in case you ran into Ruler and Duro playing Ash Seraphine later on. So it was just very bizarre. And then they just obliterated D plus with it. They played it well. They flashed the Ash arrow in a Pays Goes cleanse. You can cleanse the Seraphine ult, and they just all in repeatedly. Owner had a fantastic game. Was able to keep them really empowered basically around the map. Pays was able to get plays in the rather than the top side after swapping out a bottom lane, and like I just kind of walked away from that game going, damn, it really is going to be a 3-0. Like it is not going to be close. Like a D plus can't win with this draft. There is just no hope. And the real takeaway for me for T1 in their both of their recent losses, right? We talked about this a little bit last week, and their loss to BNK, now their loss here was that their drafting had so many holes in it, was so greedy and so exploitable. And this draft against D plus in game one felt like a similar situation where if it was GenG, they probably would have gotten completely destroyed, right? Or if D plus played a little bit better there, they probably also would have really had a struggle. D plus almost kind of came back in the game as well, if
Yep.
you remember. Obviously, there was the equalizer from Dorn. There was a bit of an overextension. cvMax wasn't happy, but there was a real chance D plus could have come back there. And the trend kind of continues, right? They had the weird Jace pick. I don't think the Jace pick is bad by any means, but in their second draft, it was fairly greedy as well with the Talia coming into the Rise. Like, there isn't as much damage. Their comp has to have pick setup. There isn't a front line for the Unara, but the hope is that pace is just so big that it doesn't matter. And that kind of ultimately happens. Career doesn't have a good game on the Blitzcrank, and so T1 win. But again, I think with the draft that D Plus had, with a little bit more agency and a little bit better Blitzcrank play, the game I think would have played a lot closer. Showmaker doesn't go 0-6. The game would have played a lot closer. And T1, I don't know what the thought process was behind coming in with these types of drafts. Like maybe they got a read over the last few days of scrims and practice and prepping. Like Como was talking about how they've been running a lot of different drafts, they've been running a lot of different scrims and working on team fights and stuff like that. It just wasn't the right read. And I think they disrespected D plus Kia in such a severe way that once momentum started going against them as well, when we went into game three's draft, then they just couldn't really ever get it back. And the most egregious draft for me was the Silas Zahin Galio
Yeah.
draft. Like that draft was so ill fated to start. It was like, I'm losing all my lanes. And the Varus is our only damage dealer, but I'm sure it'll be fine.
And don't
That
forget,
one was
Owner
sketchy.
started that game 7-0. He was 7-0. Like, you got it was T1 doing what T1 does with the disrespectful draft and still finding a way to have a crazy lead that allows them to reinforce disrespectful drafts. Except this time, it didn't pay off. And again, when I am the D+ Kia lens, Showmaker started 0-5, was lucid with the double. You called it. It was the double facepalm into unintelligible groan noise afterwards that I was like, when they replayed it, I was like, I really hope they show the player cam with audio replay. And they did, and I was like, well, that's it. It was the gank in the mid lane early on where Showmaker thought he had a kill, and then Lucid thought he had a kill, and they end up both dying, and it was the backbreaker. You know, your superstar and your stud jungler just got broken. It's over. No one's going to be able to get them over the line, especially after you had Career Crying in the win in the game before, and she was not that guy. Usually, he's not the "Don't worry, buddy, I got you." That's not him. And then it just left Smash, and it was Career in Smash that were able to put together the performance there. But yes, T1. This all happens because T1 has a draft that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean they are playing almost fully melee into a Sivir and a Cassiopeia. The Cassiopeia has obviously a lot of tools to empower herself in those types of scenarios. The ricochet damage from the Sivir is actually bonkers, and if career peels even a little bit, with also a Cyclone at the ready, like the Baron call from T1 just felt like they all simultaneously pressed slash FF because it was like, okay, well, we're gonna try to fight this around Baron where we're split into two sides because they were hiding on the brush on the left
Yep.
side and they were trying to
Yep.
collapse on the right side. And Dplus KIA are just like, so you're saying you're going to fight us in the most one of the most narrow points of the map, Summoner's Rift, and you're fighting into this composition. Okay, good luck with that. And they just ripped them a new one, and that was like it was exactly what we foretold with the draft. It was exactly what, even though the game state looked like it might still be T1 favored, even though T1 had gold lead for a while and Owner had that massive lead. I was like, yeah, but like Doran's still 20 CS down. Like he can't get outside of his turret really. You know, Faker is building some damage, but it doesn't matter because he's still Galio. You know, he can't press buttons. He's not going to do the damage that a Sivir or a Cassiopeia is going to do. And Pays like would charge a Q, empower it, and blast it out there. And I'm like, all right, so you're waiting. Smash is not waiting. Showmaker is not waiting. Conqueror is
Yeah.
procced. He's ready to go. Uh, I just wonder how this series would have been different if they didn't drop the ball in game three because they lost map control there, right? Like we could talk about the drafts all we want, but I think T1 did have game three on lock, but they really messed up the macro and D plus out macro them, which is where I want to give D plus the most credit because we talk about bad drafting, we talk about like the win cons for T1 were super wonky in this series, even when in their one drafts in game one and game two, like it was extremely greedy from them. They had the play to back it up, but in game three, D plus just pushed down the mid lane and pulled Doran around the map, gave Shio time to recover on the Olaf, frankly, because he was super far
Yep.
behind and was
Yep.
getting destroyed there. And then the Kazakhs, you know, pinch style that they were trying to play with the Twisted Fate, where they go either set up a long con flank with Owner and then Faker comes in, sets up a gold card, they burst somebody down who's isolated, or Doran's getting that wraparound flank angle with his TPs. That type of play style really struggles to work when the enemy team has vision everywhere, and every time you try to make that type of play, they just call you on it and back away or collapse on you. And so there were so many times where Faker would try to ult and then just be like, nope, not favorable. We're not going to do it. We're not going to commit to this. And then they just eventually lost too much control over the map. D plus just straight up outplayed them in that game, like 100%. Their draft was also pretty risky. You know, had to play through the Lucian, Showmaker 4-0-6, great performance on the Ari, and Lucid also monster, massive, whatever, huge on the Ambessa. And Shiu, yeah, he struggled, but he recovered right through their strong macro plays. And I wonder if some of those smites go Owner's way.
Oh yeah.
Maybe they just have enough. Maybe it doesn't matter. Some of those close team fights later on, maybe the Aphelios has Infernal Soul, and when Pays goes for the suicide mission, it actually works. Or maybe he doesn't have to go for it at all, and they just end up winning the fights because he has the extra damage required. And that was another story within this series of like owner just smiting way too early, way, way too often with a Callista in the 5th game. They just could not get their smites. It was actually insane. Lucid's just like, okay, they missed it again. All right, cool. Freebie. Yeah. Uh it just everything about this series for T1 feels like there were circumstances that were somewhat in their control, right? In terms of how they played the game state in game 3, they could have played a little bit more safely. They could have tried to play more respectfully around the push there from Dplus KIA, or a little bit more heavily into side lanes. They didn't do it. Could have played a little bit more respectfully on smite fights. Drafting could have been a little bit cleaner, right? The drafting could have been much better in game 4. There's
Yep.
all these little things that T1 almost got away with, could have got away with, but it makes you wonder, why did they play it like this in the first place? And I don't
Yeah.
think this was
Yeah.
them hiding stuff. This almost felt like they were showing stuff, and it also wasn't working.
You know what it reminds me of is like the movie trope when like the main character, it's like early in the movie, maybe like you're still in the first third of the movie, but they go to the big event. Let's say it's like a social movie or like, a coming of age movie, and the kid's going to the party. He gets invited to the cool kids party and he's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna go and just do stuff. And he makes a joke one time, people start laughing. He starts making the joke. He has, jokes more, and then he starts drinking and then gets a little too drunk and then makes a bad joke, and things starting to fade. And now the sound is getting a little like blurry, and then it's fade to black, and they blacked out and they made themselves look like an ass. That's kind of like what T1 did. They did the circus. They drafted disrespectfully, and it worked twice, right? End result twice. And then in game 3, it looked like it was still going to work, and you brought up everything there. And then in game 4 and 5, it felt like they were lost because they didn't know what they wanted to do in the first place. And it just is like the lights went down on the circus and you couldn't stop watching because you're like, this looks like it's going to be a wreck. It always looks like it's going to be a wreck at the circus, and they always come out on top. And then it didn't, and it was just such a spectacle. And that goes back to my 3-2 pick, myself and G-Sun, and I think someone else. They always get it done. They always get it done, and that's the exciting part. You're on this car that looks like it's gonna crash, but it never crashes, Wolf. It never crashes.
Yeah.
They never get punished. And I have been able to make a living on this podcast network of trying to conceptualize why it never happens. And people watch because they're like, "Aha, you're wrong. You're an idiot. Other people are an idiot." And that doesn't bother me, right? I don't mind them winning, but it's just the fact when the the actuality of what happened never meant what was supposed to happen. It never did. And then people started making that, well, in actuality, it'll always work, right? You guys are idiots. And now it's, oh, they got punished for it for the first time in 10 years by a team
I
who like an organization who's trying to build it the right way, Wolf. Like, it is
Yeah.
your superstar there, the young guys that you've slotted in at top and jungle, and then somehow the superstar slotted into your bot lane as well, who proved it last year, and for whatever reason, wasn't the guy for T1.
Yeah,
So,
T1, they went for a more expensive, more experienced option, which didn't work out in this case, at least not at the beginning of the year. It worked out incredibly well at the beginning of the series. It worked out incredibly well the last time they played against T+, and it worked out incredibly well in Kespa Cup, right? But
yeah.
uh, I have seen so many crazy takes, by the way. Like, obviously, every time T1 is in a controversial loss, whether it's a playoff game or a regular season game, it doesn't matter. World's Swiss stage game, like, it doesn't matter. Or even if it's like a barely T1 barely won, like, you could go on the internet, you search T1, or you open the Reddit thread, and you're like, oh man, there's some crazy takes in here. Sometimes there's some really funny ones, and there's some smart takes as well. But some
On and
crazy
and
takes
and
I've seen.
real quick, there weren't
Yeah,
too many crazy takes after the BNK like series. So
no,
good job
yeah,
T1 fans. Like, shout outs to you all for holding on. It's like, okay, we've got the, one series left. We had to do this in 2024 against KT, thanks
The
to Dplus KIA, right? In the
the
Worlds
the take
qualifier. They've had to do it before.
the take I've been seeing that drives me crazy, and, like, if you followed Faker for even, like, the last, like, 2 or 3 years, you probably know by now, but if you've been following him since the beginning of his career and his entire arc, you would know this would never, ever, ever, like, in his mind, ever be true, is that T1 didn't try that hard because they might need a break. They're already trying to save their energy for the rest of the year. It's the most ridiculous take I've ever heard that you would think actually that these players would just not try that hard because they're like, it might be kind of annoying to have to go to Hong Kong, compete there to win a title, and then have to go to Brazil to also compete to win money and have a title and have acclaim and fame and sponsorship money go up and continue to be competitors. Because you know what, at the end of the day, that's what this whole thing is for. This whole tournament does not have prize money, by the way. The LCK Cup does not have prize money. There's no prize money. It's just straight up about competition, qualifying for first stand, proving that you're the best team in your region early on in the year before LCK starts, when we're at the very beginning of the new patch, right? We're on patch 26, all the rift changes, proving that you're the best. You figured it out first. Like, it's all about that. It's about honor, right? And the claims that I've been seeing about people saying, like, well, T1 just didn't really want it that much, doesn't really care much. I think that's pretty BS. I think that's actually a crazy take that you would think that T1 would just straight up, like, not take this series seriously. And it's insanely disrespectful to D Plus as well. I think D Plus beat them. I think T1 were greedy. They made massive mistakes. But to essentially insinuate that T1 didn't even want this because they're tired is just an insult to, like, everyone, to be honest. And I hope I never see that take again. I saw it floating around a lot yesterday, and it's crazy.
And it's wrong because T1 are the best team in the world. They have proven it over time and time again. So if they really wanted to break, they would have just done what Hanwha Life did. Why would you throw it here? Why would you want to take a break here on Sunday, the very final day you could have possibly played, to take a 1 week break when you could have just, had a bit of an oopsie 3 weeks ago and had a month break, right? That's what I'm saying. All right, a ridiculous rebuttal to a ridiculous take. I don't think it's that, but it does. I was pondering last night on the way home. I got home at 1 a.m. Wolf. It was so late that whose fault is this? Where does the blame lay? Because
Well,
you and I, we know that they were trying their hardest. It didn't look like so many other matches. Like, honestly, if D Plus lost, it would have been really easy to be like, I like the kid, but Career had a stinker. He had too many stinkers, right? He looked bad. But I can't remember like a moment where, oh wow, it is this guy's fault today. It was Doran's fault. Maybe in game 5, the Kennen pick, because they put draft resources to first pick the Kennen and it got obliterated by the Gwen and was counterpicked
Tokyo,
and
yeah.
in the lane. But I Pays Faker maybe getting caught in that game 3 on TF, but that was him trying to make a play. Like, there wasn't a clear like, oh, this is the moment. Like there was for D Plus, even in games where they won, where they're like, oh no, this is where the backbreaker is. Oh no, cvMax and has another one of his players crying. Like it doesn't look good. There were a lot of those moments for D Plus. I don't remember a moment there for
There were
T1 as individually as I do for D Plus. So how can we
so
contextualize this in terms of
I
blame?
think I think in terms of blame, it's really quite challenging because you have, like, Doran had a bad matchup at the Silas into the Gnar where that game was completely shaped around the fact that he couldn't get control there. There was the missed smites all over the place for Owner. That was a huge problem throughout the series. Faker did not have an amazing series. Like, he went 0-2-1 on Twisted Fate, which is actually like an insane scoreline to think about with the draft they had. Like, he just wasn't able to really set up picks or do anything for his squad because D plus out macroed them. Faker also got caught a lot, like, in game 1 on the Azir and almost
Yeah.
gave D plus a win back in. Um, I've seen a lot of people primarily blaming Coma because they still, for some reason, believe that he's the one who sets up all these drafts and all these picks. We know he has a huge influence over draft direction and what the team is doing, And he will make a final say oftentimes if there's like a debate between players about what something is, what pick they want to go for a counter pick or something like that. Obviously, he has a lot of say. And like sometimes he'll have that type of final say before the game even starts, right? Like I think we need to run this type of draft here, and the players will respect that. But ultimately, it's all the players' decisions to decide to draft what they want to do, and I think that's more true for T1 than probably any other team, and has been for a really long time. That Faker and this squad are making more decisions than Tom is, right? They're making more decisions than Coma is on your
Yeah.
average day to day. And to me, I think try to blame Coma or to blame Tom or to blame Faker or to blame owner Smites or to blame Doran's Cannon game is just dishonest because it's all of T1 together making this decision through draft, through their gameplay on the Rift, where like the draft they set themselves up for in game 4 was super risky and greedy. It didn't work, but they trusted themselves that they could pull it off, right? It's on everyone, I think, in that moment. Like they swapped the Silas top. Owner's like, I am gonna play the Zahin. We're gonna do this. I'm gonna have a performance on Zahin that's gonna be good enough. Trust me, guys. And like at the beginning of that game, it looked like that was warranted. The trust was warranted. Yeah, Doran, you're going to lose lane, but this is going to be worth it. I promise you. I've been putting in the hours on this champ. I can pull it off. And like, it was a loss where if you look at the game from an extremely technical perspective, what we thought about the compositions, you're like, okay, well, this shouldn't work. I think this is a very silly choice from T1. But if you look at how T1 played it, the trust the players had of each other, how well they played the early game, you can see why they thought they could pull it off. Like they flew too close to the sun here, it looks like, but I think it's really an overarching team issue. Like it's all the players and the staff together that were not able to come up with the right solutions here in draft. I think they felt really pressured by the BNK loss where they got outdrafted there, maybe overcooked a little bit in some ways in this series here. The overall problem wasn't solved, but they came with some pretty unique approaches, which I don't really agree with. I don't really like. I think most people are on the same page as us here, but it was a team bomb. And I think it's really not as simple, like you said, as pointing a finger and be like, oh, it was career, or in this case, oh, it was owner, he missed the smites, or oh, it was the Kennen game. That's the reason. Because they had so many outs. If they just played a little bit better in game 3, if they just didn't draft like that in game 4, if they just played a little bit better in game 5, the Kennen performance was a little bit weak. Like if they played through that a little bit better, then yeah, you get the out, doesn't matter, right? It's just T1 had so many opportunities to win this game, even 3-0, and they couldn't do it. So just blame everyone. Like everyone
Yeah.
receives the blame together. I think the org will probably no one's going to be saying, "Doran, you need to be better." Internally either. I think everyone's going to be like, all right, we need to rethink how we're going to approach LCK. Like let's take some time, let's take a break and then reform like what our ideas about the meta are.
Yeah, you got there in the end, Wolf. That's what I was hoping that you would say. You were like, I don't know, it sounds ridiculous to blame Blow. I was like, well, the inverse is you blame everyone. It is. I think this is a top down kind of shakeup of wow, guys, we took way more coin flips than what we normally would without our weighted T1 coin, and we lost a lot of them. We lost a lot of it. Was um Ox was saying yesterday, it was 8 smites in a row. 8 objective smites in a row. It wasn't that he didn't get objectives, but when it was contested, 8 in a row did owner lose, and that's not owner. Owner's usually on the winning side of it, other than Cuz, right? Owner and Cuz are the guys that win the flips. You could be surprised as well when Pioshik is also like in that mix. But 8 in a row is crazy work. Is crazy work. And yeah, I hope that I'm interested in whatever they put out, whether it's in content or in socials, what the angle will be. It is, wow, we have to learn from this, and here's what we learned. Whether it's, man, we were really burned out. Like, I'm just interested in what they say because all it to me it moderately feels like the Los Ratones not making LEC playoffs on the very final day of LEC versus playoffs when they had a 90% chance of making it to playoffs. Like it there were so many turns as you said, and that was that. So T1 back to the drawing board. They will again fall in LCK Cup. They do finish higher than what they did last year, but yet again, they are felled by a former T1 member in the LCK Cup. Last year,
Yeah.
Zeus in the best of 5, all 5 games. This year, it's Smashy coming back and being a star. Like, I know Lucid gets it, but Smash was so rock solid while everything around him was falling apart, man.
I also think we need to talk about, and I think this is a slightly uncomfortable conversation for everyone, but we need to talk about how this changes the shape of the Hong Kong event, right? Like, I think
Sure.
it's not a stretch to say that a majority of ticket sales were T1 fans hoping to watch their T1 play in Hong Kong for the first time. Like local fans, Chinese fans as well coming in, trying to have the opportunity to see T1 play live. Whereas going to Korea is obviously a little bit more challenging, a little bit more difficult to get tickets. Like you have to fly to Korea to go to Law Park to watch this team play. Like if you're not going to a finals, and by the way, finals tickets aren't easy to get either, but there's a lot more seats, right? You're trying to
Yep.
watch T1 play on a weekly regular season game. Good luck. You got to try to secure those tickets somehow. It's really hard if you're a foreigner, and you got to go to Korea, and there's like a whole process there that if
Interpark,
maybe for the
the
first
great
time.
website
Yeah.
Interpark. So
Yes,
good.
it is so well known to be extremely robust and simple to use and very
Slash
easy for
S.
foreigners.
Slash S.
Slash S. So I think like there's already been people saying like, oh, there's been a lot of memes about like the airline companies are like, what's up with all the cancellations? What's going on? I don't know what will happen in terms of viewership, and I really don't expect, and I really hope, but I don't expect like that we're just gonna have like an empty arena for BNK versus D plus. But it's not going to be necessarily full. It's not necessarily going to be as passionate as it would have otherwise been because I think a lot of people, including me, including everybody who predicted 14-0, including everybody who predicted T1 to beat BNK 14-0, thought that T1 was going to be there, and they're
Yep.
not. And so that is actually a huge blow. And I hope that people don't like the success of this event that we're doing because it's such a big risk. It's such a big leap. We're giving the production to another company, right? This it's going to be co-produced by the LCK, obviously, but the main production will be a Hong Kong company that's on site. So we're taking a risk here. We're putting our finals in another country. And obviously, we've already talked about on this show, like the implications for Korean fans are upset that they're not going to be able to watch their teams domestically here, all of that, and then viewership won't be as high obviously because T1's not there. That's just a fact. Like that's stats and data that we have. Like we know that the viewership won't be as good. Attendance might not be as good, likely be not as good. I can't say that 100% to be sure, but like I expect, and I think that's a reasonable expectation. And I hope that people don't say, see, should have just been in Korea, shouldn't have done it in Hong Kong, shouldn't have done this because the expectation was T1 fans are going to be there. They might not be there. We don't know what's going to happen. And this event, I don't think is going to fail because of this, but it may hurt the outlook for future events like this because T1 couldn't just win one more game in this series. Like there's so much more going on than just like, okay, T1 dropped the ball here for the LCK, for fans of LCK worldwide. So pretty crazy stuff. Like it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. And I hope that it doesn't get lost on people how great of a storyline this could be, right? If let's I mean GenG's going to first stand no matter what, but let's say let's dare to dream Dplus or BNK Fearx, one of those two insane bot laners just has a pop off weekend, a marquee weekend, and it is a trophy being won by not GenG, not Hanwha, or not T1 in a very very long time. That would be crazy. That'd be super crazy, and I think it is uh, a great storyline. If you're forced to make a new storyline that isn't T1 focused, Hanwha focused, or
That's what
GenG
I want.
focused.
I always
This is
want
awesome.
that. I always want it to not be just a GenG T1 storyline. Viewership wants that, but that's what I want. So for me, I'm actually really excited about what it means. Like I would love to cast BNK upsetting GenG in the finals. Like how sick would that be? Like how awesome would that be for so many new fans to find out about how awesome Diablo is? Like to learn the stories of Vikla. Um, like that's everybody already knows who Chovy and Ruler are, right? But for them to lose, that's like the hype storyline.
Yeah.
And I'm all for that, and I hope that we get to see an awesome performance for whichever of these two teams ends up joining GenG at first stand, and I think we will because Korea looks pretty good right now. Uh,
Yeah.
I just wonder, will they be able to get it done? Because that's the other thing. At the time, before both of these series happened that T1 lost, we were like, T1's probably the only team that can challenge GenG.
Of
And now
course.
you're like, can these teams challenge GenG? Well, they beat T1, so maybe they should have a better chance. But I still kind of feel like T1 matches up better against
Whoa,
GenG. But
whoa,
we don't
whoa.
even know that because they never played against each other this whole tournament. They didn't even
I
meet each
know.
other once. Isn't that
But
insane? Isn't that
it's like,
insane?
but like you then go like, what do those 3-1 victories mean? You know, Gen G lost a game to BNK Fearx, also against Dplus. What does this mean? You know, these match losses or these game losses. Is that weakness? Is that hubris? Does Is there a chance? The answer is no. There is no chance. Gen G goes, they win the trophy. If you're in the area, if tickets are being resold, go enjoy the best League of Legends you can watch, which is Chovy and the rest of the gang. Ruler's back. Duro picking stuff. He's so funny. Duro's super funny. Canyon, he's back to the soft power. Canyon isn't flashy plays, but he is around the map suffocating you, and Keen just constantly just being such a menace in the top lane. Go watch that. Go get the tickets.
It's
Go enjoy
gonna
it.
be sick.
I'm not.
It's gonna be
Yeah,
sick.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not even going. I'm not even going. I wish I could go, but Wolf's going. Make sure to go. Go enjoy it. It's going to be great. There are more. I think if you're a fan in that region that has a ticket or wants to get a ticket, go get a ticket because you don't get access to League of Legends like this. You just don't. And as the guy that one of the few people in our industry that watches LEC, LCS, I dip into LCP right now, which is also going through a organizational upheaval like what LCK is kind of going through. There is no Talon, Gam is out, CFO is out. They have to come up with new storylines, and it is cool. It's exciting. The one name and team that you're gonna still feel is Evie. They're still alive, but they're going up against the Australian org. And remember, the Australian org exploded, right? There was no Australian org, which is again, anyways. So it is a fascinating kind of uh world that we live in where LEC is like, oh yeah, G2 7th seed or whatever, they're back. Who's number one over in LCS? Cloud9. Over here, we're like, I'm there's a little uncertainty. That's kind of interesting, you know. Let's see what comes out of it. New opportunity for new storylines.
Yeah,
But ultimately, it's going to be a fun weekend.
I want to talk a little bit about GenG as well and their recent win, obviously against BNK, because that was obviously the top of the bracket, right, to decide who was going directly to the finals. Since BNK did end up getting that upset win over T1, and a lot of people, myself included, were kind of like, "Is it possible that BNK could beat GenG now as well? Like they looked really good." And then I kind of ended up watching that series feeling like they're still really good, and Diablo is pretty insane, but perhaps maybe it was T1 draft error that gave him the chances to draft the way they did there, that more than like B&K saw these sick angles. Now, like they had some great angles against T1. I don't want to take anything away from them, but they did not find those angles here against GenG at all. They were
No.
not able to have the Giga draft gap. They were not able to find the draft where you're like, oh, that's the perfect answer. Instead, it was like Canyon pulling out in Italy and dunking on him. Toby's like, I'm gonna play Reverso Gold card. I'm playing Reverse Uno with Metal.
With
And even
Mal.
though they lost that game, I actually really liked GenG's draft better in this case. It was a great game from BNK, and they did end up winning it, and it was a deserved win. But I do like how Joey pulled the Mel out. I thought it was a pretty creative answer, even though again it didn't work. Um, and like the Diavolution game with the Milio, this time they were running into Ash Seraphine, and there was not a topside win for them. King gets the
Yeah.
Zahin into Scion, super safe. Uh, and also Keen the last few times we watched Keen, we were like, oh, little janky. Wasn't the best performance ever, but it's okay. It doesn't matter. Chovy has 5 million DPM, so who cares? He had a great series. Keen popped off. His
Yeah.
Rek'Sai game was out of control. So he looks like he's, he went back to the hyperbolic time chamber and he was like, all right, I had a rough game or two back there. I'm gonna show up and try real hard. And so I'm back to fully believing. Like before that series happened, I was like, I'm not going to predict it, but I think BNK win at least a game, which did happen
Yep.
on the day itself. I didn't think it would after we watched game 1 and 2. Well, I'm back to thinking, oh yeah, GenG smashes this team, and there's no way that D plus would have a chance either. And I
Yeah.
do strongly feel that way now.
This series was what, you know, I've felt is LCK, which is you have a team going up a punchy team. I like to call them offensive teams. They can upset, but you can they receive? Are they can they receive the punch back? And with BNK Fearx, you're like, you got Diablo, Vicla's there, Raptor has been solid, and then Clear is a little bit more flexible with his champ pool that he could flex the rise up to the top in the T1 series. So for me, in these types of series, you're like trying to see if the punching up team, the underdog team, can do it again. And that's all I felt. You know the meme of like the guy with the stick, like tapping the thing. Hey, come on, why aren't you doing the thing? That's how I felt about Diablo. Like in this series, it started with the Jin getting drifted by the Rift Herald in the mid lane. And it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And then the Lucian pick, it's like, what the fuck are you? Do the thing, do the thing, man. And he just never had the pop off moment. And credit to GenG drafting well, but on this day on the space, we had Arrow there, right? Was it Arrow that was there with us?
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
showing like even though Ruler is kind of falling behind or doesn't have as much gold in this early part, he knows what his job is, where Diablo doesn't. Diablo's trying to catch this wave and is like 5 seconds away from the fight. Ruler's at the fight. That's the difference between these two players right now. As much as Diablo's hands are great, and we've seen those moments, and it kind of felt like BNK weren't in the tempo vibes in the same way that they were against T1. They weren't communicating missing. They weren't communicating this is what I want. I need you here. Or they would say going for this and then no one really did anything. That's honestly what it felt like watching it when we were in the back toggling vision. And that's not how they can beat top teams in top form that aren't giving clear draft advantages. And I think that was the disappointing part, and part of my fear of sending either BNK or D plus to the international stage, because some team is going to be like, it's the first time ever that our region beat an LCK team in a best of five. They got that tweet loaded up. Social media managers got that tweet loaded up already. It's going to be D plus, or it's going to be this version of BNK that isn't playing to their potential, not in terms of hands, but in terms of the setup and the communication of
absolutely.
all the things that makes LCK great and they are
I
capable
will
of doing. They don't do it.
I will say that I think T1, and I think you will probably agree, T1 are the full package better than either of these teams. But
Yeah.
T1 lost to both of these teams in a best of five, so don't deserve to
Yep.
go because that's how the tournament works.
Yep.
But T1 are the full package, right? And I think just because you lost a best of five to uh to either of these teams doesn't mean you're worse than either of these teams. And T1 would probably have a better international performance. Why? Also because they have a lot more international experience than either of
Yeah.
these teams, right? Are better at traveling, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a concern that either of these teams won't perform as well, but look, one of them will earn their spot to go. And so that's cool, that's exciting. But I do agree with you that some of the stuff we saw from Diablo, the one point that Arrow made to us when I was watching in the fourth game of the Aphelios game was when Diablo got hit by the dredge line. My
Yeah.
my take was kind of like, oh, what of a big like what a kind of lucky thing there, like that barely hit him, and
The
like the
hitbox was
hitbox was
super
janky.
weird. It was
It's a
super
weird,
weird.
it's a weird janky hitbox, and like Diablo could have just been playing a little bit safer. That was a little bit weird. And Arrow's take was because Arrow is obviously insanely knowledgeable as a coach, right? He talks to players all the time. He was just like, oh, he's baiting the dredge lines. Like he wants this to happen. He wants to bait him. He misses. They actually get the trade, and he's like, that's cool and all. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, obviously what Arrow said, but he was like, "That's cool and all, but your job is actually just to get through this lane and be a Felios. So why is he doing that? Is the question we have to ask. Like, why is he trying to bait hooks and trying to make the outplay? Why is he trying to be fancy when he just needs to farm? That's all he has to
Yeah.
do. You know, they're playing into the Jinx counter pick. You're outranged here. You're not supposed to win this lane, but he's trying to do it anyway. And it's like, know your job. Basically, is again heavy paraphrasing, but essentially what Arrow is saying in this moment is like, know your role in this moment and don't overstep. And that's kind of always been the issue we've had with Diablo, but like it's what we love about him as well is that like when he does make the outplays, when he does make those crazy things happen, when he does break the rules, you're like, all right, nice. Um, but he did also break the rules earlier on in the series as well of the LCK because he asked for a bathroom pause in game one of the series,
Okay, here we go.
which is the
It's
second
it's
time.
it's the poopy police. Here it comes, y'all. I've seen Wolf through so many different controversies. I've never seen him so ready to pounce. Other than the poopy
So
pause. All right, keep going.
we have talked about on this show quite a bit, and actually the LCK has gotten a lot better, to be honest, about some of the
Yes.
ambiguous things that have happened in terms of pauses we've had, DDoS attacks, all that stuff. Like when Monty and I first started this show, the amount of times we had to really go hard on the LCK and the refs and some of the decisions that were made was actually extremely common. Like it seemed like it happened at least once a month, like back then, and now it very rarely happens. But I will have to have a little bit. We don't know what the official statement is going to happen yet. We don't have an official statement or announcement by the LCK. But what I can tell you guys for sure is every team in the rulebook, and this has been posted online by a lot of people, so you can find it. Obviously, the rulebook is public as well. You can go find it. I think it might even just be straight up on Leaguepedia. It's in Korean, but AI exists, and you can figure it all out. And a lot of people posted translations. If you pause in the tournament, for the first time, bathroom pause, bathroom related, you can either be warned or fined 1 million won. So basically, the
Yeah.
first time it happens, you can be given a warning instead of a 1 million won fine. So since no one ever said anything about any of the pauses that happened for any of the teams, which almost every team has had a bathroom pause this season, it's per tournament, not per like year or anything like that. LCK Cup is its own tournament. We can assume, which is reasonable to assume, that every team was given just a verbal warning for their first offense. Now, on your
Sure.
second offense, you can either be, and actually, the first time I read this, I thought it was both, but looking at the Korean again, it says and or. You can either be given, or both, right? But likely, I think would be one of the two. A 3 million won fine,
Yeah.
which is like what? I'm not even gonna speculate. Let's see exactly how much that is. 3 million won
3 million won.
to USD, 2,078 US dollars. So
Yeah.
$2,000 fine, which would be to the org. They may give it to the player, whatever. That's up to them. Or you have a penalty point, but the penalty point is not specified. Now, normally a penalty point in LCK rulebooks means that you lose a game score. So, like, if you're like, sitting at +1 in the standings, you would go to 0. Or if you're sitting at 0, you go to -1. And it just basically takes a game away from your standings, which is extremely significant. But in playoffs, that doesn't make sense because we've already moved beyond that, right? We're in the playoff standings. So, speculation is, and because of this is how normally this works in playoffs, is that you would lose a ban. Now, I imagine that the LCK will decide to fine BNK instead of going for the lost ban because it would affect the series itself that's going to happen between them and Dplus in Hong Kong. But they haven't officially made a statement about that. I have inquired about it, haven't gotten an answer yet. I don't know what will happen. If they pause again in Hong Kong, they will receive an additional penalty point and or be fined 5 million won. So it stacks. There is no what happens if you do it an additional time over that. The rulebook does not cover what happens beyond the 5 million won penalty. I imagine that they will probably just repeat the same penalty. I don't know. Or they may just like forfeit you the game. It may be up to the referees in this case.
Yeah.
But just imagine that BNK may not have, like, there's a world where they may not have a ban in game one. They may only have two bans in game one because the players couldn't go to the bathroom before the series started. It's not in a 45-minute, 47-minute game where they couldn't hold it, the game went long. it wasn't like some of these crazy games we've had where there have been some bathroom pauses in the past where even I can understand where there's like a tech pause in the middle of the game that goes like 15 minutes, and then it's also a 40-minute game, and also you had to talk to your coach beforehand. You had no idea this is going to go this long. You really got to go. I think you should probably hold it, but like I can be a lot more understanding there than like, okay, wrapped up draft. Yeah, ref, I'm gonna just go pee real quick. Is that cool with you? Like, what is going on? Like that
Yeah, I
it
don't know.
can't be happening. Like, this is a professional league. It's a professional league. We've got to stop this, and the
What
punishment needs
did
to come through.
Yeah, what did if you don't know, I think we've hit on it a lot on the broadcast, but what did is a huge paddle sports fan. So obviously tennis and then getting all of us into pickleball. But he's like, these athletes in tennis, they play for hours. They play for like 2, 3 hours. They don't go to the bathroom. What are these players doing? That's the what did impression. It's pretty good. And he has a
Pretty good.
point though. He has a point. Like if it's in the rule book, I mean, it just kills hype. There are already tech pauses that happen, game crashing, the champ select crashing, and it just feels like we take a step backwards when that happens.
It's
Go take
amateur
your bathroom
hour. Like,
break earlier. And
amateur hour.
like maybe this is on Edo and the coaching staff or whoever. It's like they took up all the time during review in between. They didn't have time to go bathroom. You got factor that in. Like it's annoying. It's really annoying, and
We have so many
I hope
things.
that it doesn't affect the competitive integrity of the tournament moving forward. But I do think stricter potty break rules are necessary.
We have so many rules like in place for pauses. Like, you can't talk to each other, right? So like someone supposedly goes into the bathroom with the players to make sure they don't talk to each other in the bathroom. When multiple players go, by the way,
Yeah,
which it's probably more of the case that they don't do not allow them to be in the bathroom at the same time as each other. So they probably like if Diablo and Kellen go, they're probably like, all right, Kellen, you wait outside. He goes in, and he comes out, and then Kellen can go inside, right? To make sure they're not allowed to talk about the game. The reason why is you're not allowed to talk strategy during a pause, because then you could abuse the pause to get an advantage or to buy
yeah,
time. You could pause before a team fight and basically get coach voice, essentially, from that. So that's why that I'm discussing this. But if the enforcement isn't going to be there for the fine or the penalty point, then is it going to be there for players talking to each other? Is it going to be there for the players going to the bathroom with each other? Like, we don't know. This needs to be addressed. I don't want this anymore. We literally have people stationed at Law Park, and it is their job. They have radios, and they track the movement of the players at all times, before the series, during the series, where they are. Just in case, like, for example, a player has a mental breakdown and goes and runs and hides in the bathroom, or runs back to the back room where his
player
stuff
room.
is,
Yeah,
goes back to the player room, and like nobody knows where he is. Every player is tracked at every moment, all the time, where they are. Like, it's really easy to, right before walkouts, be like, I'm gonna run to the bathroom. No one's gonna stop you from doing that, because they can know exactly where you are at any given point. They communicate
yeah,
that. They track us as well. They're like, all right, the English casters are going up, because they want to make sure that we're all there on time. If, like, for example, I know it's happened to me once or twice where I'm getting a coffee, think I have enough time, and I'm like, oh god, I need to just run up there. I've had people be like, hey, by the way, Wolf, like, 90 seconds till live, and I'm like, oh, okay, I don't have time to do this. I need to go there right now. I lost track of time, whatever. But they're tracking us, right? It's a live show, so there's really just no excuse. Like, there's plenty of time to go to the bathroom. There's plenty of chance to go to the bathroom. There's plenty of ways you could ask for forgiveness. Just like, I've seen so many crazy takes on Twitter. People are just like, let him pee, bro. I'm like, he had a chance, okay? He had so many chances.
yeah. Also, Wolf, you're using the word tracking like they're always watching. It's just called player handler, talent handler. They're handling us, right? I think.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I'm just saying, like, they're keeping track to make sure that, like, the casters are going where they're supposed to go, so that,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
nobody's
yeah.
late,
I
right?
know,
Like,
I know, I know.
you know what I mean? Like, if suddenly, like, Diablo is missing and the players are like in their, they're like in the zone, Faker's like doing a Faker reboot type thing before a walkout, and like suddenly, like, one of the staff was like, "Yo, where's Diablo?" Vicla's like, I don't know. I thought he was behind me. I'm like in my own headspace right now. That's why we have this, so that, like,
Yeah, yeah,
Diablo
yeah,
is
yeah.
not missing. They can be like, "Yo, Diablo, did you forget that it's time to go, buddy?" Like, you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think it's really cool. Like, the reason I bring this up, the tracking, is because I think it's really cool. I haven't really had this in other esports I've worked in where they're like really able to make sure that like nothing can go wrong, and there's no chance that like somebody could be missing or somebody could forget they need to be at a place where they need to be because someone will just come get you and be like, "Hey, it's time to go," and you'll be like, "Oh, okay, thank you, I appreciate that. I thought I had
Oh,
time to go get something else or whatever."
we're running up on time, Wolf, and there's like a couple more things I wanted to touch on. I wanted to touch on. It, I thought we saw the clip kind of surface to Reddit, which is for our Korean fans, Western FM Korea. um, the cvMax thing, right? After
Sure.
game three, Career was crying. We as Max was tossing, Career was crying, and cvMax was standing up, over the shoulder, looking at him. And we won't go too deep in it, but it it was a weird shot. And I think Max handled it well. It came back to us. All of us saw what you guys saw. We were like, what? This looks bad. This looks like, Career is having a big cry. It wasn't like, oh, there's tears or he's trying to hold it back. He was bawling. And thankfully we were able, our LCK global, I don't know what the Korean side did, but the global production was able to take a look at the comms at the end of game three, and you could hear that Career was starting to break up a little bit and already, like during the game, even in the win moment, and they're pushing out and they already won the team fight. And then another shot of Career and cvMax together, cvMax holding the tissues for him, and kind of like more like mentor next to each other, like he was soothing the conversation. And it was very easy, I think, for us to try to jump to conclusion, figure out what happened, because there has been a pattern now of players crying with cvMax. It was Andal back in Kwangdong Freaks. It was then Shiwu last year in the top lane, and then in an interview, and then now here in probably the most public way, um,
Yeah.
Career crying in a win, bro. And we were able to show that context and really hammer home the level of pressure that Career was under, because it goes back to what I said earlier. It would have been very easy to blame Career for underperforming. And you could say that across multiple different Dplus KIA series. Even in their wins, it would be like, man, Smash is dragging Career right now. And this kid looks a little lost. And man, imagine if they had so and so. And those conversations are already happening. He's a rookie. And as soon as a rookie, you start hearing those talks, unless you're like, the only rookie that I know that could probably take it would be Griffin, because Griffin is very funny and a very different kind of person. It can be damaging. It could be absolutely damaging. And I think it was a cool human moment in the competition sphere that we get to see. And we had, 7 minutes to contextualize in the post game. What did you think when you saw it, and then
I
afterwards the extra kind
so
of context
I,
that we were able to get?
I think a lot of people have predetermined their opinions about cvMax, which is like I'll just mention this because I think that this is my experience with people talking to people about cvMax in general. Is most people have a very strong opinion, either pro or against him, and it's been decided. And when I talk to people within the industry, some people have more information than people outside. Obviously, people outside are usually the more binary, because all they have is what they are shown and what they are told, right? And they are not able
Yep.
to get the context that luckily we
Experience.
were able to show yesterday,
Mm.
for the situation that happened there. And I have always felt that when it comes to these types of things with cvMax and his coaching style and his aggressive, because there's obviously so much tape like that you could physically watch that's not like things that only we've seen out there of him being quite animated, you could say, with his players. He was obviously involved in quite a public controversy as well, where there was no like proof necessarily, but a lot of hearsay. Um, which has shaped a lot of people's opinions. But a lot of players really respect him, and he's one of the coaches that when he walks around the like the arena, his ex players or even players he's worked with briefly, or he's like they guested on his stream, for example, come up to him and talk to him, and there's kind of this camaraderie with him. Like he's really well liked by a lot of his ex players, and even when he plays against his ex players, they often will come and have a little conversation. Uh, I have always really tried to stay completely neutral in terms of my opinions on this. And in this situation with Career, my initial reaction was I don't really know what's going on in this moment, but it does look like Career is cracking under the pressure, and maybe the coaching style of cvMax has given him some additional pressure. But at the same time, it has been often with cvMax with other players that hasn't been seen as much. A lot of growth that's come from his coaching style, right? And you could argue about whether or not this type of aggressive, whether even if it's just motivation, like he's talking fast, he's getting intense, and say like, I know you could do this, like that kind of thing might be like still too much for some players. So you can argue for it or against it, and whether this is appropriate in this moment, in this best of five. That's whether you go to Hong Kong or not, when Career is incredibly young and he's a rookie. Um, but I liked your take the most, which was just like, look, this means so much to Career. Like this is a really huge growth moment for him. Um, Whether it's cvMax who's making that happen or not, like by telling him like, you need to get it together, or like, I know you can do this, whatever he's saying, because I don't. That's what we don't know is what he said, the words that he
Yep.
said in that moment. I think people really need to be a little bit more willing to know that they don't know in these types
Yep.
of situations, because I see so many comments of people saying 100% this is what's going on. It's so obvious, when this person is like never even set foot in Korea, has never been to the Lall Park Arena, doesn't know cvMax personally, doesn't know his history. He's been doing a lot of interviews on the Korean stream recently in these wins for Dplus. You should go back and watch some of those. They're pretty good. He's been incredibly humble there. He was incredibly humble in his pregame interview. Looked like he was like, "We ain't gonna win," basically, while still trying to like keep it together. And He's always been a controversial figure, and I think you're allowed to have the opinion that you have about him. But to say that it is fact, to say that it is so obvious, to say that it is sure without really knowing, I think it might not only be a disservice to yourself to have that sort of opinion when you really don't know, but also could be damaging to others, and could even impact someone like Career, who might have actually been incredibly moved by what cvMax was saying. We just don't know.
And Wolf, in the win interview, who did he shout at? He shouted his teammates, and he shouted how supportive the higher ups have been. The higher ups have been like, I don't remember a player, like, obviously in traditional sports, a lot of players say that, but I don't remember a lot of players giving that level of shout out when they've had that big of an embarrassing moment, a tough moment live. So I think it was just a very unique situation that I think was a good spotlight on the sport and why we play these series and why we love competition and why we love the LCK, because as much as it's never happened before, no reverse sweep for Dplus KIA hasn't happened in a decade against T1, and they've been able to make the behemoth that is the T1 brand and T1 legacy and T1 magic, T1 circus on, playing on the edge and somehow magically getting away with it. And then going back to cvMax, as accomplished as a coach cvMax is, he's never won a best of five against T1. They got it done. They got it done. And I would like to believe it's career understanding. I'm playing with some of the best players I will ever play with in my career as my first team. I'm with a bona fide superstar in Smash, and I know I'm underperforming, and I can feel how understanding everyone's being with me right now. I want to be there. I know I can be there, but it's not happening. And that kind of dissonance can be crushing. And then in the very next game, you have Showmaker laughing as he goes 0-3 and Lucid kind of trying to pull himself together. And then he got to be the linchpin. I honestly thought in that series that he was crying, the he had he was so instrumental to sync up with Smash to have Cleanse or McHale's ready to go every time Faker gold carded, because Smash had to play on the edge to kind of bait those things out, and they did it. They did it. And that was impressive to me, especially after that terrible Blitzcrank game. Terrible Blitzcrank game. And so it was just a very awesome moment for Career to come back. And I looked at the Reddit thread, and there was a lot of support for him. And so if you want a new player to go support him. He is not without his fault, but you can see how earnest and how much it meant to him here, Wolf.
Absolutely, a guy accidentally went Aftershock Nami at Kespa Cup. You know, he's the kind of guy who's gonna make some silly mistakes because he's new and he's a rookie. But I think he makes it because he's so locked in, like he's so focused, and
Yeah.
he's definitely not our best support player in the LCK, but maybe games like this will shape him into the future. The future of career might be a lot brighter.
30 seconds, Wolf. One word to describe the DN Automotive Supers who crashed out of the tournament.
Uh, Flipped tails. Sorry, Pure Shake.
All right. Yeah, I guess one statement works. And then DRX.
Uh, Unfortunately disappointing is for the best I can give you on that one.
No.
I think they'll look better. I think they'll look better in LCK, but a little bit disappointed. A little bit disappointed.
You missed it, Wolf. It's Ernest family. They're trying their best. Y'all, that does it for this week's Let's Cover Korea. If you haven't already, like and subscribe to the network. We will have the next episode a little bit later because Wolf's going to be in Hong Kong. I will be hosting from the space here in Lowell Park next week, but we will have all that coverage for you, and we'll see which teams end up going to first stand, and of course, who will pick up the second ever LCK Cup. Bye bye.